What is up, y'all? I got something interesting to tell y'all about. So, I was having some issues with my truck a little while ago. It was having some shift flares. It was revving up before it shifted into another gear. And I was a little sketched out, so I put the truck aside to do a fluid change, but I didn't have time. It was in the middle of the week or something. And so I just pushed it off until the weekend or something. And I didn't get around to it. Well, one of those days, my bike, I was riding my bike to work. Well, of course, I had an issue with my bike. This is what happened with that. Oh, shit. Crap. Shoot. Are you freaking kidding me? Of course my chain would pop off. So the chain flung off the bike, and I was on the way to work. I was in a rush, so I had to get the bike back to the house quick, and the quickest way was to get my truck. And so I tried to get my truck there, be easy on it, but of course it completely crapped the bed on me. And well, I limped halfway home, and then I had to get my buddies Cummins to pull me the rest of the way home, which really sucked. And then, well, you know, I assumed the worst. The fluid was kind of dark, and I decided just to swap the transmission. I was actually looking at some shops. I was just gonna pay somebody just because I was done with it. Well, they were charging, you know, they were trying to charge me like $6 to $8 grand for a rebuilt. So one guy it was like $8 grand for a remand. It was ridiculous. So I decided just to say screw it. I went to Webb's Auto Salvage here in Lakeland. They had one, and I paid $1,600, I think, for a used one. But this is how it went. Okay, well, it was hell backing up. It was like, I put it in reverse, and it was like just slamming, and like just basically like the clutch was slipping almost. Oh man, this is bad. Literally, I'm going 10 miles an hour, my foot's to the floor. To limp mode. It's literally shifting through the gears automatically. It's in drive. I'm not going anywhere. I finally got here. That was a little bit closer to the shop, but now it won't go at all. It was really struggling, and now it just won't go at all. Then I came back and looked. My bike fell over, my handlebars got tilted, and I got a dent in my freaking tailgate now, on top of my transmission going out and my chain snapping. So today was just a really, really crappy day. Now I gotta get the Cummins to pull me. Super frustrating. I'm here at Webb's Auto Salvage, and I got the trailer hooked up because I'm about to pick up a new transmission for my truck. Heck yeah. So I just bought a new transmission for my truck. It's a used transmission out of a 2015, and it got here in 2017. So it shouldn't have too many miles on it, which will be good. It was out of a burned truck, so there shouldn't be any damage to it except some black stuff on it. So this is gonna be pretty interesting. Hopefully the trailer handles pretty good on the road. I'm only going just a mile or two up the road, so it's not that big a deal. Let's just hope this single-sided hitch can actually handle it. There she comes. Now to strap it down. I got her strapped down. I got a decent amount of weight on the tongue, but not too much. Got the pin locked in, safety rope. It should be all good. I got the transmission back, the shop. Now just gotta put it in. All right, so I have to empty the oil pan, drain it, and start disconnecting everything. Boom. Nothing. All right, so this is the oil filter adapter. You have 4 bolts. These were like 8mm or like 5/16 or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. Then you had a 10mm up here that had another stud coming further out that held on a bracket for the wiring harness, and it was another 10mm on it. This one was kind of a pain, but you gotta take that out so you can get to the starter up there. So I'm gonna pull the starter out next so I can access all the bolts that are on the torque converter on the flex plate. I actually am doing an oil change too, so I drained the oil too, just because it was getting close to my service anyway. And there is 1 bolt right here that comes all the way through, and then there's 2 more, I think. And I think these are like 15s, 13s or 15s. So I got the wheel well liner out, and I actually got the starter out. So this is the best way to access that top bolt, which is right up here. It's kind of up here, kind of out of the way. It's kind of hard to get to if, you know, because it sits like this, it's kind of hard to get around that. So you're gonna have to need to take that wheel well liner off. And when you get that liner off, you got a 15mm right here, and then a 10 right here. And pull those cables off, and then you can pull it down and then out. Now you got the open spot in the motor, and on the far back side right here, there is this rubber piece. It kind of just protects it from stuff getting in. It actually goes on the side of the starter. This actually covers the area that you need to access the flex plate bolts. There's 6 of them. It's on the right side of the starter hole, basically over here, closest to the motor. Pull this off, pry it off. They're just like little push locks kind of things. They got flatheads on them, but now we can spin the motor by the crank shaft from the front of the motor, and then I can access each flex plate bolt through here. So you're supposed to have an 18 12 point, but I have a 3/4 12 point that is working for the crank pulley. But right up in there, recessed back in there, is the actual head of the bolt. And so you spin that. I'm doing clockwise because I don't know specifically which one it is, but I'm assuming it's clockwise. Until the bolts of the flex plate pop up. That's the I think that's the flywheel or the flex plate, whichever one. There's 6 of them, so I'm gonna remove each of those. And then I'm gonna keep rotating it until I get all of them. And then I can start working on those lines, the exterior bolts, the linkage right here. And this was actually really easy to come out. I mean, this was just like super easy. Like, just boom, it's out. Now I'm going to disconnect all the lines off the transfer case, finish pulling that drive shaft off, and finish getting this one off. The thing was super tight, but I got it. Just slowly back it out. Okay, so that's the last one. There is 6 right here. As you can see on the torque converter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I put a ratchet strap on the drive shaft, ran so I could pull it this direction, and this kind of had a little bit of rust on it, and so I just hit it with a 2-pound on the external shell, like not the drive shaft itself, and just tapped it until it popped off, and it just slides out like so. Just like that. Gently put her down, You definitely don't want to damage nothing. Alright, so this space right here is too close to use a socket and a ratchet. It's just too close. It looks like it's a pretty decent amount of space, but I actually try to use my 12-point box end, and it actually snapped off right here. It's bent and snapped because I used a breaker bar. These are pretty good. So I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to show y'all. So I'm actually going to take this socket and weld it in there so I don't snap another one. So there's the socket. Should fit on perfectly. So, plenty of space. Alright, so I got those main nuts off so I can put the jack into position. And kind of get it positioned where I want it. You also have to pry out these lines. You have to unbolt it right here and pull it out. Then you also got the dipstick up there. Unbolt that. And I'm going to try to pry that up out of the top of the transmission. And then, after everything is disconnected, I got to see if I can try to get the top bolts first. Because these ones way up here are the most difficult. So I'm going to try to use this to get up around the transmission. Try to use this to get up around the transmission if I can. So it's a huge pain in the butt, but as you can see, I have the socket going up, this one up here. So I still have two on the very top of the transmission. After I get this one done, I have 4 more on the top. So stupid. Alright, so I got this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, this bolt out. This one is still up there. It got stuck. I couldn't pull it out further than the oil dipstick. That comes in right here. So it kind of stuck, but it's coming down with the transmission. So now I just have the easily accessed ones down here. Here we go, there's the down pipe. There's the torque converter. I got the flywheel right here. I'm actually going to pull this off real quick because I am going to try to access the rear main seal because it looks like there might be a leak. So, not a very bad one. It's a little one. So, there's the flywheel. So yeah, it's leaking a little bit. It's leaking a little bit in the rear main seal. Alright, so I'm gonna take some sheet metal screws, screw into each side, and do the pull method instead of like some special puller. So I'm gonna drill it in there real quick. There we go. Heck yeah. Came out pretty easy with my makeshift sliding hammer. Has a little bit of residue from the self-tapper, but yeah, there's some oil up in there. All right, so here's the new seal. I actually cleaned out inside of there, and so I'm actually gonna put some lithium grease around the edge of this piece. I'm not gonna put it on the crankcase itself. I'm not sure. I guess it just seals better, but I'm gonna put it on the crank side. This is supposed to be white lithium, I think. Guys did the white lithium, but I just found some lithium in general. All right, I try to work that edge in. I'm gonna use one of my makeshift seal savers to push the seal in. Push it all back up in there. This piece went over. This piece actually pushes it as far as it needs to go in. So I saw a few videos online showing that the seal should be flush with the crankcase. Well, this piece was on there when I removed it, and this actually pushes the seal way back. So basically, I feel like that's gonna seat that itself. This piece actually has a keyway, so it has only one way it can go on, and that's like that. One of the new bolts. So when I torque this down, it should push that seal back further if it needs to go back further. I'm pretty happy with it. I got everything put back on there. The seal is in there. And these bolts are brand new because you're supposed to replace them once you remove them. They're one-time use. You probably could use them again, but since I'm in here, they don't cost much money, and so I might as well do them while I'm in here. Anyway, these bolts I found are 44 foot-pounds, and then you torque them again to 75 foot-pounds. So I actually got my breaker bar that's on the front of the crank tied to one of the steering components so it won't move, so I can properly torque these down to spec. Okay, now going to 75 foot-pounds. All right, so those are all 75 foot-pounds. Did it in a star pattern, and then I did it in a circle to verify they're all at 75 foot-pounds. We are good on the flywheel. Here's a little bit what it looks like. So there is the pulley for the crank, the main crank pulley. It's on the center of the motor, the furthest one down. And I have an 18 millimeter on this breaker bar. And then I have it tied to the steering mechanism. So it cannot move left or right. And that is how I kept the crank from moving while torquing those down to spec. So I got the new used transmission here, and I got the Dremel, and I'm gonna try to scrape all of the crap off of it because this is like the color it looks normally, and all this black stuff is from when stuff was burnt. So I want to make sure it's as clean as possible when I install it, because I want this job to be as professional as possible, because I don't want it to look like I half-assed it. So let's get it cleaned up. And all this stuff in the bell housing is not okay. So look at all that crap. Look at that crap. So I'm sitting here with degreaser and the wire wheel, just sitting here cleaning inside here to try to make this thing look mint. And I'm still cleaning the exterior as well. Looks so much better. Look at that bell housing. Beautiful. This side's a little bit dirtier, but it still looks pretty good. So I am happy. I'm gonna put it in now. I'm probably gonna use a forklift to lift the front of the truck up so I can actually slide the jack and the transmission out. Finish separating the transmission and the transfer case, and then mate it with this one and throw it back up. Forklift works. There she is. Woo! Awesome, thank you, sir.
Glad it working out for you.
So now I'm going to finish connecting all the transfer case bolts to the transmission. There's the old one. Only difference that I see is this one says 42, the other one said 41. Alright, so we got the new transmission with the transfer case bolted to it underneath the truck. There's the old one. And my actual neighbor in here actually let me borrow his forklift, and so that saved me so much frustration trying to pull it off the jack, drag it out, put the other one in, put it on the jack. So this way I pulled it out and he helped me put it onto the jack. It was just such an easy process. So anyway, all I gotta do now is put fluid inside of the torque converter and then put the torque converter back on and then really just lift it up and bolt it to the flywheel. So it's not much more work. So while it's on the ground, I am bolting all of those back on. I'm actually putting the transmission mounting bracket back on down here. I'm also lubricating this seal. This piece actually seals inside of the torque converter, and so I lubricated that. Lubricated a little bit around that seal right there, and I'm going to put the torque converter in after I fill it up with some new fluid, and I'm just going to fill this puppy up. Honestly, I'm not sure if you're supposed to fill it up or what, but man, this is taking a lot. Holy crap. So I got a good bit of fluid in there. I'm not going to fill it up all the way. I don't want it to spill on me. I'm going to pull it up under there with me, and so I can put it on. I spilled a little bit right there, but I'll wipe that up real quick. Try to push it into position. Jack it up. Try to adjust it to where it's going to come up on the truck flush. And jack it up. Pull it in. Push it from the rear. Another important thing is don't forget the alignment pins. There's one on this side and one on that side. It kind of makes sure the transmission lines up properly. So I was able to get the flywheel and the torque converter to line up. I just use the side-to-side adjustments and the forward and backward adjustments to get the angle right. This definitely saves a lot of heartache and headaches. Now I just gotta sit there and bolt up the transmission and then bolt up the flywheel. So I used this bolt to kind of pull the transmission to the engine because I knew the torque converter bolts were going through the flywheel like they should. So I just kind of used it to snug it up a little bit. One thing I didn't know when I was removing it is this can actually fit a ratchet back up in here to get this top bolt. Now you can't get a torque wrench obviously, but that is on there pretty good. So behind the downpipe, there's enough between the firewall and the downpipe you can get to this weird bolt, this weird position bolt. So I got the very top one. Now just to finish bolting it up. Another thing to be aware of, that bracket up there is a fuel line bracket and it actually bolts behind two of the transmission bolts right here, like it hooks around and you bolt through that bracket. That actually got hooked between the surfaces, so I was trying to snug it up here, and that was in between. So watch out for that. Kind of pull it out of the way when you get close to mating these up. Put these suckers back on. That one's on there good. And one thing to note is I got new nuts for the torque converter. I got new bolts for the flywheel when I got the rear main seal, because all that stuff was supposed to be replaced when you removed it, and it's so difficult to get to. Why not spend the extra 40 bucks and get all that stuff you need? So, and I just started putting the nuts back onto the flywheel, so I'm spinning it around by the crank again. So I can't actually fit the torque wrench up inside that area. There's just not enough room, so I'm just having to tighten it with my ratchet as much as I can. So I got the last torque converter nut threaded on. Just got to finish tightening it, and that will be all of the torque converter nuts. And then I can finish putting the bolts around the housing, and I'll be done. Hook up all the electronics and everything, and then the drive shaft, fill all the fluids up. I just lubed those O-rings up, and I'm push them into the transmission. And this bolt on the side of here has Loctite on it, so I'm gonna put Loctite before I put it back on. There's the new transmission. The fluid's still pretty red in the pan. It doesn't look like there's much in the pan. There's the valve body. About to put the new filter on. Alright, so you're gonna put the new filter in, push it up in there, and you're gonna screw it back up. There we go. One thing to make sure is I actually pulled those apart, so make sure to put those back in. Make sure you have nothing on the crank. Make sure you put the shock back. That should be it down here in the front. Right now I'm putting some automatic transmission fluid into something I could transfer it into the transfer case. So basically you just drain it from here, fill it up from here until it starts overflowing. It's that simple.
Ben?
What up?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm just putting fluid in it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's a used transmission, so I don't know if it's good or not, honestly. All right, so I put the starter back in, and I'm about to put the oil filter adapter housing. I kind of cleaned off all the oil so I can kind of see if it's leaking anymore. I'm about to install it again, and then put the oil filter on. There's the housing back on with the plugs on it. Now I'm gonna put the oil filter on. So I just put this bracket back in. That's with the shifter linkage. So those lines go on top into the bracket with the little clip. Then this one just bolts on there and it pops over the shifter. And then I'm gonna run the electrical back over. Like that. Makes everything looks good. So I'm putting the front drive shaft back in, and I actually put a little bit of grease between that surface, not to get on the threads, but to just keep between the two mating surfaces of the drive shaft so it won't rust together like it kind of was starting to. So I'm gonna do that, and then do just these surfaces right here, just in here where they mate, just because I don't want them to just freeze up. Kind of want to keep them lubricated, keep the water out if I can. I packed the shaft that's coming out of the transfer case with some grease. I also put some grease around that as well so it doesn't rust to that one too. Make sure that's cleaned off good. Push that in. So after so much frustration, I finally got the oil pan off, and I actually had to use a ratchet strap to hook in the hole where the oil drain plug went and actually pull on it. And then I had to pry up on a little bit, and it broke the seal. And so far, I don't see anything that's suspect of anything bad. I don't see any metal flakes at all, actually. That's actually a little bit of paper towel. I'll go buy myself a new oil pan and then put it back on. So I had to run to the store and get some more lacquer thinner because I ran out. This is typically what I use to clean off the gasket mating surface for the RTV. Plus, I picked up another pan because I slightly damaged that one. So I decided to buy another pan, brand new one, and it should be good. So let's do it. I put a thin layer of RTV on this oil pan, just enough to where it should fill in the surface perfectly fine. It shouldn't ooze out into the oil pan too much. So I'm gonna let it set up first while I'm cleaning the surface. So the surface is pretty good. Over here is where I messed with it a little bit, and I'm pretty mad about that, but it still should seal up. I gotta clean the rest of that. And the sump and everything looks pretty good in here. There's no metal shavings in the oil, so it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Alright, so I got the new oil pan on. Just gotta finish everything else out. This oil filter is kind of pretty. So I'm gonna put this puppy on right there. And then I should be done with the engine related stuff. Should be able to go back to the transmission. I got the filter full of 5W40 and I'm about to throw it on real quick. The last step is just fill up the transmission through the dipstick hole until it reads full. And then we can crank it up. I think I'm ready to test it out. I'm just gonna pull her outside right now, let it run for like a minute or two. Brakes. So it goes forward. I pulled it out, wasn't shifting perfectly, but I think that's because it was low fluid. So I added some more engine oil and transmission fluid. Both are back up to the line. on the dipsticks. So hopefully it's good now. Okay. There's fourth. There's fifth. Back on I-4 with some bad traffic. But I got the first load with me. I might have to take the second load to work with me. So it's been a few months since I replaced the transmission in my truck, and I've had very, very little issues. There's been a few hiccups, a few hard shifts, but nothing crazy, nothing abnormal. The other transmission did it too. I've actually hauled 3 different trailers. One, I hauled this trailer and this 300ZX 7 hours and 0 issues, pulled like a freight train, just like the 6.7 normally does. It was great. I also got that Beetle Bug back there that I hauled back from Orlando, and then also hauled a Hyundai as well. I sold that already, but I can't complain. This transmission was worth every penny of that $1,600. So it was totally worth the $2,000 overall. That was including the transmission jack that I bought, opposed to the $6,000 to $8,000 somebody was trying to charge me to replace the transmission. So anyway,